Hello, my lovely ladies, and welcome back to Training Tuesday this week. It is awesome to see you guys all here. I know I had last week off. It was amazing, and we'll talk about that another time. Because tonight we're going to focus on the fun of office politics. So, as I said in the promo video, hopefully you guys saw that yesterday, talking about tonight. I started thinking about the fact that with our chakra series that we did for the last several weeks, we were really focused kind of internally on our energy, right? How we show up internally, what that means for who we are, how we feel, all that good stuff. And then I started thinking about how do we take that energy and how do we turn it external, right? How do we make that energy, how does that energy show up? Right, with where we work and what we do every day. So that's when I started thinking about office politics, because office is where we show up every day, right? How we manage our career every day, and all the different ways in which our energy can support us and sometimes can hinder us. But in the scope of office politics, that is something that not only we have to deal with, whether we like it or not. It can be a really big energy drain. A lot of the clients I talk to when we're talking on a regular basis are talking about, how do they manage working with a particular coworker, working with a particular boss, and all of that stuff. So I wanted to start initially by just saying, I'm going to read this for you guys, right? According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the meaning of office politics is the activities, attitudes, or behaviors that are used to keep power or an advantage within a business or company. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, office politics are the relationships within an organization that allow particular people to have power over others. So the reason I wanted to read the definition is because the first thing we have to get out of the way, ladies, is that office politics are about power. It's a power play. And you have to get comfortable with your own power if you're going to play the office politics game well. Now, a lot of people will leave business, right? They'll leave a job, they'll leave an opportunity because, the politics are too bad, they're too hard, etc. And totally valid. But there isn't an office that exists without some level of office politics. And the choices we have to make are around which of those games are we going to play and how are we going to play them. And really the bottom line is simply, how are you going to show up? How are you going to lead yourself in this environment that you're working in? So we're going to talk tonight about office politics. And I'm going to start by telling you about a problem child, because tonight, so again, when I started thinking about office politics, like the laundry list of topics I could come up with when it came to office politics, it was a lot. So we'll do this as a series. We'll cover a few different topics over the next few weeks. And I invite you to share with me, please, any topics related to office politics that you want to be sure we cover off on, that we have some strategies and some tools for. I'm going to cover off tonight on the problem child, because there's somebody that we all run into. We'll cover off bullies. We'll talk about cliques, right? The group dynamic plus the individual dynamic. We'll talk about all of that. But please share with me if there's a particular office dynamic that you would love for me to address. And we'll cover that on a Training Tuesday. Tonight we're going to talk about the problem child. And my problem child, and this was not that long ago. And I've run into this problem child before. So tonight we're going to call him Carl. It's going to be a boy for right now. And his name is Carl. And Carl just was not available. If I sent a meeting request, he would ignore it. Like, he wouldn't accept it and he wouldn't decline it. He would just ignore it. He ignored emails. He ignored chats and IMs, text messages. He never answered his phone. So anytime I needed something with Carl, couldn't get hold of him, couldn't find him. Made it incredibly frustrating to deal with him until he needed something. Because of course, if he needed something, He picked up the phone, he responded to an email, but the minute he was done getting what he needed, he was MIA again. So, curious if you guys have had a problem child like Carl, right? That coworker who just doesn't show up. And I'm curious if your problem child isn't Carl, what does your problem child look like? Who is that person? Because there are other flavors of the problem child at work. When I refer to the problem child, I am referring to an individual who creates challenges at the office because whatever they're doing is stonewalling, so you can't get your job done, or they're distracting, or they're interfering in some way, and we'll talk about all of those. So drop for me in the chat what your problem child looks like. And I'll go through a couple of the personas that I've seen over my career, but I would love to hear who you're running into or have run into in the past. So, and I'm going to pause for a minute and say hello. I see Rachel's here. Hey, Rachel, Jackie, Joyce, hi. I'm cutting in and out. Oh, that must be my internet access, and I don't know if I can fix that. So let me know if it gets worse, guys, and if it does, we'll see if I can figure something else out to solve that issue. So I'm going to pause. I say hello, ladies. Hey, Sue. It's great to see you guys. For those of you, if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Natalie Hahn. I am your head coach here at Dirty Girls Consulting. I'm happy to have you guys joining us for Training Tuesday. We are here every Tuesday night. We are here to talk about different topics as it relates to leadership and confidence and just what it is to be a woman in the workplace. And we're starting a new series these Tuesday nights on office politics. So thank you for joining us. Join us every Tuesday night at this time, 6 p.m. Eastern for that. So Sue says, problem child creates an issue so they can solve it. Oh, that's a fun one. Make their own drama so they can be the hero. Nice. Jill, hey Jill, good to see you. Similar, those who don't respond. Yeah, when they know there's a client or a deadline. Exactly. So that's my guy Carl here, right? He didn't care if it was my deadline, right? Didn't care. Wasn't his problem. Wasn't his priority, which is often an issue when we're dealing with people like this, right? If our priority isn't their priority, they don't care. Other problem children I have run into, the office gossip. A little bit like Sue's, right? Creates a problem so they can solve it. Sometimes the office gossip just creates problems. Like they're so busy getting into everybody's business and wanting to know what's going on and spreading the stories. It's hugely distracting, right? I have had the argumentative coworker, the one who just, their answer was always no, you were always wrong. They always had to be right, and they did not like being told what to do. You're not my boss, and that's not the way we should handle it anyway. So they took no authority or leadership from anyone but themselves. I've also had, similar to Carl, I had a Kevin, and I've written about Kevin before, so I don't know, guys, if you guys remember seeing anything I've written about Kevin, but Kevin was the one who was just a late or a no-show to meetings. Just wouldn't show up or would be late, but just would never say anything, would never give me any feedback, right? So if I could get hold of him, and if we did meet, he would talk. But if we didn't, he just wasted my time and didn't show up. So wasn't a big fan of Kevin's either. Why are these people so problematic? Well, they're a distraction first and foremost, right? We get annoyed with them. We get frustrated with them. Our energy, we talked all about our energy when we talked about the chakras, right? Our energy gets diverted. And our energy is diverted into being annoyed, into being frustrated, into trying to find workarounds for something that shouldn't require a workaround. And when we're not feeling great about them, it takes us to what we call catabolic energy levels. And the catabolic energy is those low levels of energy. They're heavy, they're draining, they make us tired. We start to lack motivation. We start to lack productivity because we are frustrated with somebody else's action. Our morale at work starts to decline because we're not motivated and we're not having fun anymore. It can put us in a cycle where we are spinning our own wheels. It can put us in a cycle where we are complaining all the time, or we're just wasting time, right? We're just not very productive. Excuse me, pardon me. When we are distracted and our energy is drained, that has other impacts, right? It means that we can be emotionally a little bit on edge. We can be a little edgy, a little irritable, easily frustrated. We can have a very hard time focusing on work. And if we're not focusing on work, it gets done more slowly and we make more mistakes. So when we aren't getting what we need from whom we need it, progress gets slowed or even halted, everything slows down. So not only are we slowing down and we're not being productive, but our actual job, our actual work, and our quality of our work all slows down. Now, on a broader scale, this person can not just attack our morale, but they can attack the morale of the entire office, right? They can impact how everybody at work is feeling. So that's something else to keep in mind, that the problem child is not just your problem child, but organizationally can be a problem child. And then that starts spurring thoughts like, why do they get to behave this way, right? Why aren't there any consequences for this person? And there might be a variety of reasons why, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through the series too. But it does put that thought in our head. This person has no consequences for their bad behavior, or nobody's called them on it. So remember, office politics is a power play, and your problem child is playing a power game. That's why they behave the way they behave. First and foremost, it works for them. If it didn't work for them, they wouldn't do it. If they weren't getting away with it, if they somehow weren't getting some sort of reward for it, they wouldn't do it. What we need to get comfortable with is getting involved in the power play from our position of power, how we want to navigate office politics in a positive way, how we want to own our power. And a lot of times, especially for women, the word power is an uncomfortable one, right? We're not fully comfortable saying that we own or that we take on our power. It feels very masculine. It feels very directive and driven. But what we're talking about when we talk about power is an exchange of energy. So what is the personal energy, the personal power that you are going to come into the situation with? Because we all know a problem child. We've all got one. If not in our current environment, we've had one in the past, and you will have one again. It's an office environment. It's people. That's how we work. So here's the thing. We're going to talk about how we deal with this particular version, right? The problem child, the individual who is the roadblock, the glass obstacle, right? You hear me talk about the glass obstacle course? Usually when I think about the glass obstacle course, I think about it in terms of our overall career. And we have these big glass obstacles that we have to work our way around or over or through to project our career, right? To get us going forward. I want to think now about the glass obstacle course as it's confined in your work environment. What are these obstacles? They're still obstacles. They're smaller. They're confined inside this office, but they're still there. So the first one we're going to navigate is this problem child. Here's the thing with difficult people. We can't always do something about them. Fun, right? We can't always do something about them. That is one of the biggest challenges when we're dealing with a problem child at work. And I know it's not the answer you wanted to hear. We can only really do something about us. And if you've been on Training Tuesdays for a while, or if you're one of my clients and you work with me, you knew I was going to say that. We can only really do something about us. However, I am going to talk about what we can do for them, with them, and what we do for us when we're dealing with a problem child, right? Because in doing something, even with trying to mitigate them, you're still doing something for you. And we need to ensure, the whole point of stepping into our personal power is to ensure that we are taking care of us. So, Let's first talk about them. So I am also addressing this, and this is where I said there's so much to talk about with office politics. I am addressing this from a level of this is a person who is more or less up here. Somebody you need to work with. They might be your equal. They might be a little bit below you. They might even be a little bit above you. But in some way, you need to collaborate and cooperate with them to get a job done, to hit a goal. So this is how I'm thinking about this person. Not a boss who's a bully, okay? And not somebody who's, multiple levels under you who's just being kind of a snut. Try not to use bad language. It's just being a nudge. But somebody who you actually need to collaborate with and work on more or less a peer basis. When somebody is being the problem child, and let's take the scenario, we're going to remove the office gossip version for a minute, and we're going to focus on they're withholding information, they are hoarding information or things that you need. They are even if they're actually, and I should say, even if a bit of a gossip, they're creating problems or they're creating roadblocks that don't need to be there. First and foremost, is to find a separate and private time and place to address it. Because the first thing you're going to do is you're going to address it directly. This is where we need to step into our power and be a leader. Doesn't matter if you have a leader title or not. It doesn't matter if you're leader of the project or not. If you have a job to do, you have a goal that you're supposed to hit, and this person is supposed to collaborate with you on it in that dynamic, you want to be the leader. And the leader puts things on the table. Now, we're not trying to confront this person to make them uncomfortable. We're not trying to confront them to put them in their place, even. We're trying to collaborate. The goal is to move forward towards the shared objective. So first and foremost is a direct conversation with your problem child to say, problem child, there are some things we need to do. There's a goal we need to accomplish. There's this project we need to get done. Can we agree on that? We have this shared goal. Try to find alignment around what it is that needs to get done. And maybe your goal isn't their goal, but they still have a key piece of data for you, or you still need something for them, right? Something that they do. You at least very clearly need to say, here is the goal, here is the objective that I'm being held to. So what we want to do is depersonalize the conversation. This conversation is about a goal I'm trying to hit and the impact if I don't hit the goal. So if my goal is I need to pull together this report, and this is a report about revenue, the impact is that my boss, my boss's boss, my company, the business, our unit, our team, can't make a decision about how we move forward until they see the numbers in this report. So we want to talk very clearly, what is the business objective and what is the impact? Now, in addressing what the roadblock is, I can't get this done because what we want to avoid is the personal attack. This is not personal. We're asking someone to be accountable for professional behavior, for doing their job. So the phrasing we want to use isn't you're trying to control everything, or you're trying to be the hero in this, you're trying to set this up so that you're the one who looks good. We're not attacking how they're behaving. We're not attacking their attitude. We need to frame their actions. So it becomes a conversation around, we have this goal to hit. Here are the reasons we need to hit the goal. Here's what I need from you to make that happen. And until this moment, we're having this conversation because I haven't been able to get that from you. I would love to hear how we can move this forward. Now, you're doing two things. One, you are clearly defining, here is the action that you have taken or have not taken that is creating the roadblock to hitting the goal. And you have made it completely about the business, not about that person being a jerk or being uncooperative or being a control freak. You may need to be prepared with specific examples. Here's a time when I needed this from you and I didn't get it. I want to avoid this happening again. So What can we do to fix this? And you're inviting them to help give you the answer. Two things you need to be prepared for, however, when you directly confront somebody who has been in this power play mode. One is denial. No, you're wrong. I gave you that, or I meant to give you that. I don't know what you're talking about. This is where you might need the specific example. Well, I asked for this on Tuesday. Here's the email where I asked for this. I don't have it yet. Could you get it for me now? Because typically when somebody's in a power play, either they want the confrontation because they want to assert their power, or they want to avoid the confrontation because they're passive aggressive. So one is be prepared with the specific example of, here's what I asked for, here's what I needed, this is a challenge right now, we need to solve this problem. I'm inviting you to help me solve the problem. You should also be prepared for them to turn around and say, but you did this. They want to turn the attack around and say, I'm not the problem here. I'd give you what you need, but you asked in this way, or but you said this and not that. They may try to flip it around, in which case you can listen, you can accept it or not accept it. You don't have to agree with them because it's irrelevant. At that point, all we are trying to do is move them off the spot they're stuck on and move them forward. So the conversation really is, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate the feedback. What can we do right now to move this forward and hit that goal? To get that information, to put that plan together, to put those numbers together, whatever it is you're trying to get them to do. So if they turn it around and there's a counterattack, you listen, you can even acknowledge it. Acknowledging doesn't mean you agree with it or that you accept it. Acknowledging simply is, I hear what you're saying. What I really want to focus on in this conversation is how you and I work professionally together to get this done. What should we do next? Because sometimes the counterattack, it's just a distraction tactic. It's just an attempt to keep that playing field unbalanced, right? If you have somebody who's passive aggressive, and passive aggressive are the underhanded comments, right? They're the under the cover comments that could or could not be an attack. You're never really sure. Consistently, I have found the best way to deal with the passive aggressive comments is to call it out. And again, you do it professionally, you do it respectfully. You do it by one simple question, which is, what do you mean by that? You said you didn't get what you needed from my team. Could you explain that to me? You want them to go deeper. You want them to explain. Now, maybe they'll come up with a whole list of grievances, and maybe you do have a much bigger problem on your hands, but you don't know till you ask the question. And most of the time, if you know this is somebody who uses the passive-aggressive ploy to manage their power, when you push a little deeper, they have nowhere to go. And that moment of, well, never mind, it doesn't matter anyway, or it's not important, is an opportunity to say, then let's focus on moving this forward. Let's focus on how we're going to collaborate right now. Key to all of this when you're having a direct conversation is to document it. No matter how that conversation ends, whether they agree to help you with your project, whether they don't agree, whether you have to have a follow-up conversation, the next best thing you can do is go back to your computer, to your phone, to whatever you're using, and document the conversation. Typically, I send an email. Hey, Carl, appreciate your time today. So glad we got to connect on Project XYZ. From our conversation, here's what we talked about. The fact that you've been don't even phrase it that way. I want to say that because I get angry with these people. I want to say, you haven't been available. Here's what we talked about. The fact that we're behind on this project because X information was missing. And we agreed in our conversation that you are going to email me this information. Thanks so much for your cooperation. Now, you're doing a couple of things with that documentation. Is one, you're putting in writing that they've agreed to a solution or they've agreed to some next step. Maybe it's, we couldn't come to quite an agreement, but we are going to schedule a further conversation on this. How about tomorrow? You're also putting it in writing so that you have your notes on what happened, your interpretation on what happened, and you have it documented for everyone to see, because that's Carl's opportunity to say to me, no, Natalie, that's not what I meant, that's not what I said, or that's not what I'm going to do. But now I have it in writing, because if my direct conversation with my problem child does not actually fix the problem, where do I go next? You decide how many conversations you want to have with the problem child. You choose that. Because here's the thing with the problem child, it doesn't get fixed if it doesn't get addressed, period. You're either going to choose to live with and tolerate the problem child behavior, or you're going to choose to do something about it. I'm suggesting that if you're going to do something about it, that you take a direct approach and you document it. If after taking a direct approach once, twice, 3 times, however many times you choose to do it, there's no rule that says that to be polite, you have to go at least 2 times. No, there's no rule. After you do the direct approach, however, then it is appropriate to go to a boss, whether that's your boss or their boss, or you have the same boss, but somebody in a supervisory role. And you're going to have the same conversation. And by that, I mean, this isn't about so-and-so's a jerk. This isn't about so-and-so's behaving badly or trying to control things, or it's a power play. This is, I needed to get this done. I wasn't able to get this information or this piece of the puzzle. I talked to Carl about it, and Carl said, or Carl did, or Carl went, you are reporting just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. This is not a personal exchange. Everything we talk about is about how do we keep things professional and respectful. We are not interested in personal attacks here. I don't care how much of a jerk Carl is, and trust me, Carl was a jerk. But it didn't benefit me in any way to keep talking about what a jerk Carl was, or how rude he was, or how, mean he was, or anti-female. None of those topics were helpful because I needed information from him to do my job. So instead, the focus is on the action. Carl has information I need. He's not sharing the information. Here are the ways I've asked for it. By the way, boss, here's my documentation. Here's the email chain. Here's the conversation we had. What do you suggest we do next? And you do want to have in that conversation be, what are the next steps? Every conversation should end with, we need next steps because this is a problem child and I'm trying to get to a resolution. You do the same thing with your boss that you do with your problem child, right? That I did with Carl, which is I then say to the boss, I then send the boss an email saying, thank you for the conversation we just had about this project. I appreciate your help in my interactions with Carl, with my problem child. Here is what we agreed to do next. I look forward to supporting the next steps. Because now you've just done with your boss exactly what you've done with your problem child, which is you have documented your full understanding of the situation. You have given them an opportunity to respond to that. So if there needs to be any clarification, it can happen. Brene Brown says, shame doesn't live under the light. When we are in passive-aggressive mode, when we are in power plays, and it is not the goodwill of everybody that's at heart, it also doesn't live in the light. Your part of your documenting your conversations is shining the light on, we have an issue here, it needs to be resolved, because my problem child isn't going to resolve herself or himself because their behavior has not been challenged so far. It's been rewarded, or there just simply haven't been consequences. If you're taking these actions, you're trying to change that. You are trying to change a dynamic. You are trying to change a culture. Now, you may have multiple bosses up the food chain that you end up having this conversation with, and you're going to treat it the same way every time. You're going to keep it professional. You're going to focus on the actions that are creating the stonewalling. And you're going to document it, and you're going to follow up with a document that everyone can see. And at some point, maybe after you talk to your boss, maybe after you talk to multiple bosses, you may end up talking to HR, human resources. Human resources is there for this purpose. I've had the benefit of working with some amazing HR teams. I've had, the not so great benefit of working for some not great HR teams. This is also the dynamic of office politics, right? We have great teams and not great teams in every discipline, in every company. If you have an HR team that you feel you can go to and talk to, that's your next step. Because now you are Because what you're flagging here is that you can't get your job done. You cannot be successful in your job and in your career with this person as a roadblock. Now remember what I said. This is if you want to do something about it. Plenty of us make the choice to live with the problem children. And what I'm telling you now is if you're going to do that, you have to remember you made the choice. You can always do something. You may not like all the outcomes. You may not like all the choices for your actions, but you always have a choice to do something. And doing nothing about a problem child is a choice. If you choose to have the conversation with HR, it's the same route you've treated every other conversation. It's professional. It's focused on getting our job done, on being respectful, and it's documented. Even with HR, you document it. These are your notes. This is so you know what you've done, who you've communicated with, and what has happened or has not happened next. It avoids getting into conversations where we have he said, she said scenarios because you've documented it. Now, I know we're going a little bit over. There's so much with office politics, guys. What do you do for yourself? So I quickly want to talk about a few things that you should be doing for yourself, regardless of whether you choose to confront your problem child or not. When you're in a situation where there is a problem child, it is a great opportunity to self-reflect. It is. It's a great opportunity to say, there's a difficult situation here. What's my role? How am I showing up? How do I want to show up? The problem child dynamics, the only piece of it you can control is you, your power, your energy. So ask yourself the questions. How are you showing up with the problem child? What is the energy that you are addressing the problem child with? How are you approaching them? The language, the attitude, the body language, right? How are you approaching them to get what you need? How would your mentor or your hero, how would they approach this person? Is there a new approach you want to try or you want to model? Who do you want to be in this conversation? So think about how you're leading, how your energy is leading, first from the perspective of how am I even showing up? Because if I've dealt with this problem child for a while, I guarantee you, and I did it with Carl, that the minute his name came up, I rolled my eyes. Oh God, not Carl again. I don't want to deal with Carl again. That's not great energy to go to Carl and go, oh, Carl, look, will you just call me back, please? I'm not going to get anything out of Carl like that, right? So what is the energy you're approaching your problem child with? Versus what is the energy that the powerful leader you want to be would approach Carl with? Are you creating an environment of trust? Are you creating a safe place for this person to collaborate and share information with you? Right? This is all how you're showing up. Only piece we can control. Is there anything in your behavior or attitude that might be triggering that person? And be honest, because what we're trying to do here is solve a problem. How much am I the problem? Maybe I am. Maybe for Carl and the kind of personality he was, I'm a little too direct. I'm a little too brash. Maybe Carl needs a softer touch. Maybe Carl's just a jerk. I don't know, but I don't know until I ask the question. So ask the question. Most important part, when you're dealing with a problem child, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of 5 reasons why your problem child is behaving the way she is, or he is. 5 reasons why Carl was always avoiding my phone call, or always avoiding my text, or my email. Only one reason can be because Carl's a jerk. Only one reason can be because this person is a jerk. 4 other reasons. Why else is this person displaying the problem child behavior they're displaying? And yeah, we're guessing, we're extrapolating, we're making up a story, but I want you to come up with 5 alternatives, because in those scenarios or in those situations you might think of, now you've just opened the door to the options of how you can approach this person and see if you can get a better response. And 2, can you have compassion for them? If I knew that Carl was getting beat down from his boss all the time, and always having to share information, or had a boss where information was power and his boss was hoarding information from him, does it not make more sense to me now that when I deal with Carl, he's hoarding information from me? Maybe. Doesn't excuse it in terms of now I can forgive Carl and we can move on with life because I know I'm not going to get anything out of him. What it gives me is perspective. Because boy, I'd hate to work for Carl's boss if his boss treats him that way. And if I can have a little bit of compassion for the situation Carl's in and why he might interpret things the way he does, I can think of new ways I might approach Carl. Or, at the very least, I can have a little compassion and not be as annoyed as I normally get. Can you have compassion for their reaction because their reaction 100% of the time is nothing to do with you and everything to do with them? They own their reaction. They own their behaviors. So what are some ways they're triggering that maybe I can help work around, that maybe I can support them in a different way and they'll trust me more and now we can be more collaborative? What is something that we have in common that we can work towards? Can we build smaller goals first? Sometimes when we have a big ask, we would be better off baby stepping and asking for something small and then asking for the bigger information and then the bigger piece of information or the bigger piece of help. I get it's work. We don't always have time for that. But if it's somebody you're going to be collaborating with over multiple projects or for a long time, maybe we step back and figure out how do we accomplish small goals together first and then work on the bigger ones. Can we get aligned and excited around a common goal? Can you identify their love language, right? We talked about love languages a couple months ago. So if you want that training on talking about love languages with your coworkers, let me know. Drop love languages in the chat and I will shoot that training over to you. Other thing to think about is whether this environment's the right environment for you. Do they foster this kind of problem child behavior, or are they going to back you up and help you create a new way of being? Right? Are you ready to take on the cultural revolution that is getting rid of a problem child? Whether it's correcting their behavior or not tolerating their behavior, what is that? Final thing, boundaries. At the end of the day, your power, your personal power and your energy lies in how you manage your boundaries. When a problem child is doing the Heisman or gossiping or pushing back on you and telling you you're wrong or they're not going to do it because you're not their boss, it's a power play. Power plays are all about boundaries. What is the behavior that you're willing to tolerate? What are you willing to tolerate? What are you allowing to happen that feels disrespectful, that feels like it crosses that line of professional behavior and respect? How are you feeling about it? What should be different? What are you willing to do to set those boundaries? Are you willing to have that direct and clear conversation? Are you willing to draw the line in the sand to say this is what's acceptable and this is what's not? Are you willing to walk away from the situation that encroaches on your boundaries, that encroaches on what you need and you deserve for that professionalism and that respect? Are you willing to draw the line and walk away from it if it doesn't meet your standards? Boundaries are a power move. They are your strongest power move. Being clear on your boundaries, setting your boundaries, enforcing your boundaries. That is where you step into your energy and your personal power. So, I know we ran long, but if you're going to deal with the problem child, at the end of the day, it's about your boundaries and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're willing to do to navigate that process. I do have a boundaries worksheet. I have two, actually, but I have a boundaries worksheet that I'm happy to share with you guys. Drop the word boundaries in the chat and I will shoot the worksheet over your way. It's a really quick worksheet just to help frame your head around what are some boundaries I'd want to set and how would I frame that? How would I word the setting of my boundaries? To get you start thinking about, right, how much you're going to put up with. What are you willing to do with this problem child or multiple problem children? So if you want the training on love languages, drop love or love languages in the chat. If you'd like the worksheet around establishing boundaries, drop the word boundaries in the chat. Happy to share both of those with you. And as always, if you are having challenges with a problem child or setting boundaries, or identifying love languages, or just looking to manage the glass obstacle course that is your career, drop the word DIG in the chat below, and we will schedule a free coaching session, 15 minutes to talk through your biggest challenge and get you moving forward. Now I ran long, guys. I knew office politics were going to go deep, so I'll try to get this cleaned up for the next few weeks. We're going to dig into other aspects of office politics and how to navigate them. Would love to hear your questions and your feedback. Let me know what other angles of office politics you'd like to cover, and we'll dig into this for a few weeks and we'll see where we get. All right, have a fabulous Tuesday night, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week.